Today, many startups and fast-growing organizations prioritize agility and speed over quality. Do you think this trade-off is sustainable? And how can companies strike a balance between moving fast and maintaining high standards?
Agility is the most popular phrase among executives these days. So if you don't align your organization to satisfying customers and not do harm to society, and then have agility, you're causing more harm than good.
But I think the thought emerged that in the Western world, that getting to the customer faster is more important than getting it right. If you're not first in the game, you do it and then keep improving. So it's in the context in which they operated. Even if you're not perfect, if you're not meeting all customer requirements, get there before the competition does.
Sometimes it works, especially if you're working at the cutting edge. The problem arises when that same product then goes into the mass market and the people who are then using it can't deal with it. It's happening with software all the time.
I believe that quality is deeply tied to a company's culture. Can you share an instance where implementing quality practices not only improved processes but transformed the culture of an organization?
If the priority objectives of the company are the same as before, and you're only looking for agile and faster ways of getting there, then you are promoting the old way with more efficient ways. It is about creating another world, another universe. So it needs paradigm shifts. This is fundamental change in the organization. Then only the culture will change.
So Ram, despite many companies claiming to prioritize quality, we still see product recalls, ethical lapses, and customer dissatisfaction. What do you think is missing in the way business approach quality today, and how can they address these gaps?
You know, Janak, I hear CEOs speaking in conferences and conventions. They say, oh, in our company, quality is a given. Nowadays, we are focusing on innovation or AI or whatever it is that takes their fancy. I think that is a disaster.
Today, even to get half an hour from CEO on the context of this is very, very difficult. So how can we get commitment to such things without a deeper understanding, which you just explained?
Partly our fault, Janak. We lost the CEOs 25 years ago.
True.
Coming from business school myself, I have now been preaching the exact opposite of what they have been teaching and what I learned. So I made that switch. There are deep concerns about what they are teaching because that will not lead us to the kind of world that we are looking for.
In your experience, what sets apart leaders who successfully champion quality from those who struggle to implement it?
There aren't many who have succeeded. We can easily look up the qualities of those who have succeeded. You know, people like the late Ratan Tata, Arun Bharatram, Anand Mahindra, 3 names I mentioned. There must be many more. For one thing, they're all humble. You can't find any of these people bragging about themselves or about their companies. They don't talk big. They don't use jargon. They speak with respect, and they speak as though the other person knows much more than they themselves do. If you met them on the streets, you wouldn't know who they are.
Namaste. Today is the first time I'm participating in a podcast with 2 well-known people who have made excellent contribution to the society on the whole, especially in the manufacturing space. One of them is Mr. Ramanathan, and Ramanathan, known him for over 40 years. We worked together in this journey of quality movement in India since then. He worked in industry till, I think, late 1990s. I worked in industry till 1985. And subsequently, I got involved in TQM promotion all over the country. And Ramanathan took on the role of a TQM president in his group company and promoted the same. And subsequently to that, he has been an independent consultant, making excellent contribution. And I hope you will enjoy both these podcasts, learn something new, something different. And as I've learned in life, when we learn something new, it takes years to practice it. It doesn't give results immediately. Don't be impatient. Try it out. You'll find difficulties. Find a way to overcome it, and you will succeed. All the best. Ram, thanks a lot for joining me on this episode of this podcast. It's the first one I'm doing with others, and this is a starting point. We'll do it.
Great privilege, Janak, especially with you.
having known you and started our journey together so long time ago, I think we're partners in crime. They're coming, many people think.
Yeah, true, I agree.
So, what I would like to do is to understand a little more, some things I know, but some things more I would like to hear, because this is going to be used for larger audience who may not know at all. So let's start off the beginning. What were the early influences in your life that led you to the world of quality management? Did you always envision this path, or just you found it on the way?
Well, I wish I could say I was born with quality in my mouth. It wasn't like that at all. So, for one thing, I graduated out of IIM Ahmedabad in 1969, and we didn't talk quality there. We didn't hear of Walter Schuhart, we didn't hear of Juran, we didn't hear of Feigenbaum, and of course Deming was not even known in America at that time. So we missed the quality bus there. Then I worked in a few companies, some 17 years. And even though at points of time I was actually in one place responsible for quality assurance, among other things, and also product development, I have done sales and marketing, and I have been in hardcore production and production planning. But quality as we understand it now, no, it didn't come across it at all. So it was not until I joined SRF Nippon Denso, which is a joint venture, as the head of the company, that I began to first hear of this term, strange term called TQC, as it was called, Total Quality Control. Yeah, so I really discovered it on the way.
Great, but then at what point of time, you said Nippon Denso, so let's talk about the Nippon Denso as a company that you've been associated with many large companies. Nippon Denso you just mentioned, but in your journey you've guided many companies, associated with many specialists in the field of quality. So looking back, was there a particular moment in your early career when you realized the transformative power of quality, not just as a tool, but as a philosophy of growth and excellence?
Yeah, I think it did happen in Nippon Denso. Now it's called Denso. But it didn't happen straight off the bat. So within a couple of weeks of my joining Nippon Denso, I had to go to Japan, among other things, for an orientation. And one day I was taken around the Anzhou plant, which is one of their giant plants, pretty close to their headquarters. And they explained the entire system of the Toyota production system, which they call total industrial engineering there. And at the end of the day, I didn't understand it. I had a cup of green tea with the plant manager at the end of the day, and he made another statement which was very striking and stayed in my mind, but I still didn't get it. He said, the job of a plant manager is to so arrange the factory that the slightest abnormality becomes visible at a glance. This is the exact statement he made. And it's etched in my memory, but it was much later that I got the meaning of it. So we had lots of problems in Denso in those days. The conditions for manufacturing were not good, flip-flops in policy, and we had trouble. We had also trouble with localization of parts, which was mandated. And at that point of time, I found that our Japanese expatriates who were here, who were not more intelligent than us, they knew how to solve the problems. We didn't. We also realized that they would be very thorough. They would take an A3 sheet, In those days, they would write with hand and then take photocopies and so on. And they would have the complete picture of a problem in an A3 sheet, and then they would keep solving it. We didn't know any of that. So one day I asked my plant manager, how come these guys are able to solve problems, but we aren't? Now, he had been to Japan on a longer bit of training than I had been. And they had given him a book there, and he brought the book to me and said, this is how they solve problems. It was Statistical Methods for Quality Improvement by Professor Hitoshi Kume. Little did I know that he would then become my mentor and friend later on. So we also then bought Ishikawa's book, the 7 QC Tools. Using these 2 books, then I proposed to my senior team that we form a study group. And we would sit together, each person taking responsibility each week for one chapter, and he would make a short presentation in a group of, we were 7 or 8, and then we would have solved the problems at the end of the book on our own. We would share that, and we would look at some of our problems in our plant and whether we can apply this thinking there. We were all very busy. We were up to here. So we used to meet on Sunday mornings at the guest house. So we self-taught ourselves problem solving, and we grew in confidence as a result of that. So that was a major, major step forward. A little later, Janak, you took us to JUICE in Tokyo, and I was in one of the programs, and that was quite something. You also, through CII, came to our company. We had a few sessions with you. And at some point of time, I understood that we are talking about another universe. This is not the universe I knew about. But I had to still learn it. So, believe it or not, I emptied my brain. I told myself, I know nothing, zero, I'm a zero. My brain is completely clean and clear, and there's nothing in it. And then I started applying myself to whatever I learned. This was the process by which I got there. And as I got there, I said, this is what I should be doing. Not running another company. You know, we were at the time negotiating with Nippon Denso with the liberalization coming in, and SRF was getting out of the joint venture. So I told Arun Bharatram, I want to come in and promote TQM. Now, this was not a usual thing that he hears from a chief executive, but to his great credit, he agreed. And that was that. So I ended up making this my career.
That is a fabulous story. Was it very difficult to empty your mind?
Looking back, you know, I wouldn't say so. At that time, it did seem, hard to tell yourself, no, you know nothing. All that you learned so far in the institute and in the 17 years of work experience mean nothing. This is all fresh, afresh. Look at everything with new eyes. But it happened.
Not many people can do that. Actually, very, very few people can do that. We are so stuck with what we already know, stuck to our experience base. Compliments to you to have made that transition.
Yeah, you're probably right. And if I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have been in this field.
So, you talk about Denso. I recall in mid-90s, one of the visits to Japan, I visited Denso also. And in their simple way, I asked them, we used to hear about TPM. So they asked me, what is TPM? And I had learned somewhere that TPM originated in Denso, in the sense they used to do the productive maintenance, but the T part of it got added because they got like total industrial engineering.
Yes.
So that's how it got added, and it became TPM, and they didn't call it TPM.
Yes. Yes, that's right. So the word total really signifies by everybody.
Right.
And that applies to whether it's to a production system or productive maintenance or quality management. It applies everywhere. And yes, you're right. Denso was the first winner of the JIPM award on productive maintenance. So they shifted it from preventive maintenance to productive maintenance. And Professor Nakajima was the one who I think was associated with them. And he is, as you know, one of the founders of TPM. And curiously, the Denso TPM had bits of German influence in it. Because early on, Denso collaborated with Bosch. And then, of course, they left Bosch behind. That's another story. So they had a person known as Einsteller in the TPM system and so on. So they merged it very seamlessly. And so the Denso TPM system was a unique kind of system. Its model is not exactly the same as the JIPM model.
And JIPM has become more of a professional model to sell it all.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but anyway. Yeah.
Another interesting thing I found in Denso at that time was there was an open area in the plant. People sitting on the computers looking at those things, and so I asked them, what are they doing? And I was told, this all electric motors in the plant, their characteristics are monitored here. So any change in amperage, etc., in any electric indication is mentioned about abnormality. So this was one way of finding an abnormality. As you can discover it on the power being used, then you get a signal that this machine is not behaving normally.
Speaking of AI, in the 1980s, I want to share an experience. It's the same visit to the Anjo plant that I mentioned. Now, at the end of the line, there was this assembly line for alternators. There was one type of alternator which went into cars. And there were 94 models of that alternator going through the same assembly line. And this is the Toyota production system, so you don't make in batches. You make one of one model, 4 of another model, 2 of the third model, and so on. And some of the parts were different, especially the housings and so on. They were fed in that sequence required using what they described as an artificial intelligence system. This is the term they used, 1987, February. So I haven't seen a line like that yet after that.
That is phenomenal. Actually, many of these things got practiced there, but we never knew about it. The world didn't know. 20 years later, somebody comes out with a new terminology. And I just want to pick up on one point which you mentioned about this study group that you followed in the Nippon Denso in India. It was something similar. We started the TQC journey in Nasik as a part of the Nasik experiment.
Yes.
With Professor Ishikawa's book, Guide to Quality Control, 11 companies got together.
Yes.
And we had a similar system that first self-study, then group study, where one person takes the lead and collectively come to a better understanding. Then apply it in the exercise given in the book. Having done it, then put it into practice in your respective companies. So I think this power of group learning, which I believe emanates from the Gurukul system of education in India, still we have not been able to use it effectively anywhere.
Yes and no. If you look at the cluster system that CII practiced with the help of Professor Tsuda, with the tier 1 suppliers of Maruti first, and then with multiple other groups, then it became part of a UNIDE program, and there's a now government-initiated program going on. I'm not sure whether all of them follow this method of group learning, but the first cluster that was formed by CII together with Maruti and with Professor Tsuda was based on learning, mutual learning. So in each month, the entire group would go to one of the companies, share all that they had done in the previous month, observe the new company, and discuss that and make a plan for the next month.
Great. Actually, the first cluster was the 11 companies in Nasik. We didn't call it a cluster.
That's right.
But in reality, it was a cluster.
So that I'm saying the mutual learning didn't get entirely lost, but I think there is a tremendous opportunity for learning multiple subjects, not only problem solving, but even technical subjects through self-study groups. I keep promoting it, but to no effect.
Same thing, even, Professor Suda, you remind me, I came across when I left CI to start TQMI, I received a letter from Professor Suda. And he had listened to my presentation in Brussels in 1992.
Yes.
And then he wrote me that I attended this and you wanted me to, whether we can do some work in India. I will be more than happy to do that, and I'm coming on such and such day. So in my belief that, when I made that contact, I was at CI, I just passed it on to CI to take it forward.
That's right.
So I never met him thereafter, but I think it still reminds me that he was very powerful, like TVS Motors still believe that he is their mentor.
Well, he was rightly the first recipient of the Dronacharya Award from ISQ in 2003, as you will remember.
Yeah. So he didn't accept it.
2004. Right?
2004, while Professor Vashu accepted, Professor Kume accepted, Professor Sudha never took the award. Stayed with us. But that's the way he believed in it. Anyway, I think let's move on to the next question. You've seen the evolution of companies in India and globally. Today, many startups and fast-growing organizations prioritize agility and speed over quality. Do you think this trade-off is sustainable? And how can companies strike a balance between moving fast and maintaining high standards?
Agility is the most popular phrase among executives these days. Yeah, but I have not understood agility and speed to do what? To not satisfy customers? So if you don't align your organization to satisfying customers and not do harm to society, and then have agility, you're causing more harm than good. The other thing is agility is not just about being clever, about maneuvering through certain situations and being resourceful. That is at best operational. At the strategic level, you first need to be adaptable. By adaptability, I mean being ready for the evolving world. Many things are changing in the world. Now, you cannot be ready with everything, or you cannot choose one path out of the ways in which the world will evolve, because the world may then go in another path. So you got to be ready for it. So you actually have to make some investments, have some people working on those subjects, and then as the world moves in a certain direction, you are quick to move into that direction. That is adaptability. How quick you are is about your agility and speed. Agility is about the cleverness that you have, and speed, of course, is necessary. But speed without alignment means that you cancel each other out faster. The alignment is the first requirement. The mass is the second requirement. How many people are involved? Then if you have speed, even if you have a small speed, you have momentum. Mass into velocity. I see people cancelling each other out more often than people being aligned and moving. And they consider it speed.
I've also seen that some companies having their values as agility. I ask them, how do you define it? And often they are not able to define what agility means. If you do agility and speed, you do the same work faster and faster and redo it again and again.
Yes.
But I think the thought emerged that in the Western world, that getting to the customer faster is more important than getting it right. If you're not first in the game, you do it and then keep improving. So it's in the context in which they operated. Agility is, even if you're not perfect, if you're not meeting all customer requirements, get there before the competition does. Hook on the customer and then keep on improving. That's my understanding of what I heard from people.
A lot of people say that, and sometimes it works, especially if you're working at the cutting edge, because your cutting edge users can tolerate mistakes. The problem arises when that same product then goes into the mass market, and the people who are then using it can't deal with it. It's happening with software all the time. But it's also about other things. For example, you say get in with some errors and then go ahead. Now, in the Western world, thanks to the massive investments made by the United States government and others, you have the electric cars, and an electric car maker went ahead of the traditional car makers and so on. That is agility, speed, and everything. Now, talking to Toyota, they say, no, we know how to make this autonomous car. We know how to make the electric car. But if we send out an autonomous car and there is a single accident, it'll set us back by years. So we won't do that until we are more and more and more sure. I think this is a difference in the way you think. If there are no great risks, of course, making products with errors and mistakes is okay. And if you're dealing with cutting-edge users, it is okay. But when you're dealing with the mass market, firstly, it is not okay, it is inconvenient. Secondly, it could be dangerous, as in the case of an autonomous car.
Yeah, I recall Toyota saying perfection of technology before you introduce it is a binding principle with them.
So there are two ways of looking at it. Neither is right or wrong, but I think you should be very careful about introducing products with flaws in any kind of market. You can do that in particular kinds of markets at particular times.
Thank you. So next query I would like to have your response. I believe that quality is deeply tied to a company's culture. Can you share an instance where implementing quality practices not only improved processes but transformed the culture of an organization, and what made that change so impactful?
Janak, every experience of mine has been about transforming the face of the organization. So you don't change that, then nothing has changed. So if your paradigms are the same as before, if the priority objectives of the company are the same as before, and you're only looking for agile and faster ways of getting there, then you are promoting the old way with more efficient ways. I don't think this is about that at all. It is about creating another world, another universe. So it needs paradigm shifts, no question about it. It needs you to understand that the goals that you held to be the top goals are no longer the top goals. Something else is the top goal. This is fundamental change in the organization. Then only the culture will change. What you're looking for changes. So the companies I work with, I keep insisting that profit is not your objective. What is your objective? You satisfy customers. And profit is a result. And the companies which have done best are those who have caught on to this early. Right? Now the second issue about this is that if an organization is not at a high level of proficiency and capability, and even if it is sometimes, please don't assume that the managers know what their problems are. They don't know. That's why in quality you have the system of diagnosis. So when you go to an organization, what you're really doing is to diagnose the organization. And with long experience, you know how to diagnose it in quick time. So more than once it has happened that I ask the top management, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And I get a whole bunch of answers, which are all pies in the sky, up in the clouds. But then I walk into where their work is actually being done, I notice a completely different set of problems. And in one case, I told them, what you need to do is this in the plant. I don't care about anything else that you said, and walked away. They were wise enough, or accidentally, they accepted that, yes, we will do it. The point is, unless the problems are understood, the real problems, and the priorities of those problems are understood, the culture will not change. Now, you cannot do this by teaching alone. Now, this is a major difference between the Western way and the Eastern way. In the Eastern way, we believe that you learn by doing. And as long as you don't take the trouble to soil your hands and do, you are not in a position to understand what is being said. On the other hand, you start doing, and then your whole thinking changes. Your paradigm starts shifting. So we shift paradigms not by shouting from the rooftops, but by taking those actions which, if carried out, will show them that another way is better. And if that happens, the culture changes. If the culture doesn't change, nothing happens. I used to have a colleague of mine when I started TQM and SRF, and he used to come every day and tell me, Ram, nothing will happen unless the culture changes. And I used to tell him, so and so, if the culture has changed, then you don't need to do anything. So I completely agree with you, it's the culture change. But the root is by doing.
How easy, how difficult have you found that to be?
If it was easy, we would have transformed the country. The fact that our country is where it is points to the failure of our ways, if you might say so. Very few manage it. But where they manage to do this, the results are spectacular, unbelievable.
Great. Okay, let's move on to another topic now. You and I have seen quality management evolve over the decades. In today's world, with rapid advancement in technology like AI and automation, how do you see the definition of quality changing? Are companies adopting fast enough to keep it up?
Well, companies are trying many things, not always with surety about what they're doing. It's at the moment not easy for anyone to know what should be done. Some things have become clearer. Many very wise men are predicting that AI will cause a disaster to humanity. That is to be seen, but let's assume it's all to the good. What is to be done is still not clear. There are companies which apply it in different stages. At the early stages, with small improvements and small results, it's okay. If AI does not help you improve customer satisfaction, then it's not big deal. If it's only to improve your efficiency, then it is something but not a big deal. I think you bought a car recently. You go to a car showroom, do they understand your needs? Does the salesman know how to find out your needs? Does the salesman know, having found out your needs, what is the best model out of the lot that they have which might suit you? Would the salesman be able to say, I have understood your needs, none of our models suit you at this moment, but thank you very much for telling us, probably we'll develop a product. Now, none of this happens actually. I have tried this out myself and with some hilarious results, but it doesn't happen. If you apply AI here, you can actually prevent mis-selling, because a lot of products that are sold, it's not only cars, but it could be a tire, it could be a shirt. A lot of mis-selling occurs. Mis-selling does not occur only in insurance. That is, you end up buying what is not really your need. And then sometimes you regret it, sometimes you put up with it. Right? So I'm sure so many people would have bought a car which after buying they realized it wasn't the right car for them. That to me is a responsibility of the company. And I think AI can help minimize these mistakes. This is one example. But of course, AI is a very large field. I do not pretend to understand it. I'm in the stages, or in early stages as far as AI is concerned. So I may be the wrong person. Somebody like Kiran Deshmukh would give you far more meaningful answers.
Thanks, Ram. I understand it's evolving technology, and I don't know anybody is sure how it will impact the society on the whole. But I also agree with you, unless it addresses the customer needs and customer satisfaction, well, it will improve efficiency. Challenges many people do what they do and call it AI, so that's another kind of issue that we face. In a way, what I found in some companies, it's been helpful. A large number of equipment of a similar nature. Data is available at scattered places, not easily available to the person who has to take a call on this. Maybe top management aggregates data is available. So AI and those organizations I've seen make data available on time to the relevant people, and segregated data helps them to take countermeasures and improve the quality of the products or the process. So to that extent, I've seen useful application of AI. Yeah. So another aspect on which you have done substantial work, Ram, is sustainability. I recall when you joined IAQ, I suggested you chair the sustainability think tank, and you were the one who said, well, if you call it Planet Earth Concern, then you're willing to take over. So I said, sure enough, let's call it Planet Earth Concern.
Yeah.
Come a long way. Can you share some of your experience?
Yeah, you were the one who encouraged me to form that think tank. But if you recall, even before that, in the Kohler Village meeting in Wisconsin, was it 2007 or thereabouts, 2008, that I first presented Q for EEE, ecology, earth and environment. So my thinking about this subject dates back to 2008. And by 2016, it was time was ripe to form the think tank. And the think tank took off very, very slowly, because if you meet once in a year or once in 2 years, then not too much of work gets done. But actually, COVID changed that whole thing, because we could meet regularly through Zoom, and we started taking some steps forward. But more importantly, that's the period where I could from 2016, write some peer-reviewed papers. So one is about the dimensions of quality. If you recall, there are 8 dimensions of quality from Garvin, which is what companies still use sometimes. But I expanded that to, based on a lot of other, work by other people, into 20 dimensions. The last 5 of which are actually sustainability dimensions. And I said in my paper that the sustainability dimensions have to be part of the quality dimensions. Right? It's yet another requirement, and in this case, it's the requirement of the society into which your product is going, and in which it can cause harm. And therefore, these 5 dimensions of sustainability was integrated with the quality dimensions, which you can then use in product design, so that you design the product to meet these quality dimensions, whichever ones are applicable to the product or service that you're designing. So that was one step. The other thing to remember is that quality is there to deal with any kind of situation. So in our days, we were dealing with quality to improve efficiency, reduce waste, satisfy customers, and so on. Now you do the same thing to ensure sustainability. You can do successful sustainability work no more than you can do anything else without quality. So without quality, there is no hope of hope, is one of the statements that I made. Hope is HOPE, normal. The other hope, as you know, is the acronym that I've created, which is Health of Planet Earth, with a small o. So to create hope, you need quality. There is no other way. There is no solution outside that. Immediately, that also brings you into what are the objectives. Because as we said a little earlier, your paradigms and your goal setting are the system level interventions that have the maximum leverage. And here also the goals must change. I see companies talking about CO2 emission, but you don't release CO2, you consume energy. So your problem is specific energy consumption, unless you're making steel and you're burning limestone and coke, right? So very few companies have to worry about anything like CO2. You only have to worry about specific energy consumption, specific water consumption, the 3 forms of pollution, air, water, and land, and 4, material footprint. You've got to use less and less material. Less and less material also means more durability to your products, using lighter materials, using less materials. And of course, later on, then it breaks up into renewable and non-renewable materials. That's the material footprints. These are the only 4 things corporates can do. If you can't do enough of that, you do offsets. You buy a plantation and set up a wetland and so on. So minus quality, sustainability is unthinkable. I didn't want the word sustainability because it is understood in so many different ways. Health of planet Earth or planet Earth concerns cannot be understood in several different ways. In the West, it's become common to talk only about climate change as though it's the only environmental problem, but it's not. It's not even the first problem. Biodiversity is. So we need to think about the totality of the planet Earth concerns, not just one element of it.
The challenge today is that many companies say we've done enough of quality, let's now focus on sustainability. Like you mentioned a little while ago, it's improvement in reducing energy consumption, water consumption. These have been targets of many companies even earlier. Only thing they were cost-driven target rather than quality-driven targets.
So we can now say sustainability effort will reduce your cost, and so comfortably we can say that, which is true. Yeah.
So Raman, despite many companies claiming to prioritize quality, we still see product recalls, ethical lapses, and customer dissatisfaction. What do you think is missing in the way business approach quality today, and how can they address these gaps?
Yes. Problems can occur in the best run companies. So the mere existence of these issues cannot be then construed as loss of quality focus. But I understand your concern. The instances are multiplying and they're becoming more widespread, and they are also entering companies which were renowned for quality before and who seem to be losing their way. You know, Janak, I hear CEOs speaking in conferences and conventions. They say, oh, in our company, quality is a given. Nowadays, we are focusing on innovation or AI or whatever it is that takes their fancy. I think that is a disaster because quality is not a given. It never will be a given. It never was a given. And they'll have to nurture it every single day. What do they mean when they say it's given? That there are no defects in their factories? That there are no customer claims and complaints? And let's assume that is also miraculously conquered. What about tomorrow? Are customer needs the same? Are they going to remain the same? How will they evolve? What about attractive quality? Don't you have opportunities to create them? So the moment you say quality is a given, then I think you're putting your company into trouble. And when you say quality is a given, you also, I think, unwittingly give rise to some lack of ethics. If you recall the 1954 Joran visit to Japan, he called quality an ethical imperative. So the philosophy of quality and the methods of quality are very much part of a certain ethical way of running a company. Right? You try and dilute quality, I think your ethics will also be diluted. So it is a matter of serious concern because some of the companies which have experienced these problems now are companies which we have venerated for years. I won't name them.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Ram. Very often people who say quality is CEOs who say quality is a given, first of all, think in context of narrow product quality, Even that, as you said just now, is not a given. And I think in 1984, when I made a presentation to the CI Executive Council on this, I'd raised this very question. And all CEOs says we are committed to quality, and we talked about total quality control. So my question was, how can you be committed to something we haven't even understood yet? So in that context, some of the CEOs at that time were willing to go and find out. Like we had the first team of 18 CEOs, we visited Japan. They spent 5 days understanding quality, or TQC, and the quality in the holistic respect. Dr. Irani was one of them, and he transformed, the way he said himself. At the end of the program, he says, the most useful week of my entire business career. But out of those 18, maybe 2 were transformed, the rest were probably not transformed. So this is a challenge. I put in the podcast, they say, I'm committed to quality. How can you be committed to something you're not even sure of? Today, even to get 1 day or half an hour from CEO on the context of this context is very, very difficult. So how can we get commitment to such things without a deeper understanding, which you just explained?
Partly our fault, Janak. We lost the CEOs 25 years ago.
True. And I think it coincided with the liberalization of the economy when the world's best consultants came into India.
That's right. And the business schools.
Yeah.
So the business schools and the consultants, the international types, I think have seriously undermined the prospects of excellence in our companies. I'm making a damning statement, but that's what I feel.
I agree with you 100%. I've been saying it for many years. I recall, in late 90s, headline news was productivity, cost and profit. Quality and customer was never in the conversation thereafter. Otherwise, brick and mortar industry is dead. Leapfrog the manufacturing revolution and go into service revolution. We are paying a heavy, heavy price on that today.
Yeah, they have undermined our corporate world, no doubt about that. And they've undermined the way the government functions as well.
Right. And then we talk about cultural change. Anyway, there's little we can do about it.
See, coming from business school myself, I have now been preaching the exact opposite of what they have been teaching and what I learned. So I made that switch, rightly or wrongly. But I see there are deep concerns about what they are teaching, because that will not lead us to the kind of world that we are looking for.
And unfortunately today, those very large majority of such companies still want to talk about excellence and not quality. For them, quality is a given. So when I ask them what is the definition of excellence, very few can define what excellence means.
Yeah, this has been a problem ever since the Tom Peters Waterman book of In Search for Excellence. And you know, excellence is a nice and convenient word, but it means different things to different people. And you may not define it, and you can get away with it. And this term business excellence is also, in my opinion, a problem, because business excellence is a consequence of something that you do. It's not what you do, but it's the outcome. So I can understand management excellence, I cannot understand business excellence.
Okay. And when I look at the dictionary meaning of excellence, it says quality of doing something. Actually, if it's quality of doing something, why don't focus on quality?
You're right, you're right.
Okay, let's move on to another subject on leadership, and partly we've been talking about it. Leadership is often the deciding factor in whether quality principles take root in an organization. In your experience, what sets apart leaders who successfully champion quality from those who struggle to implement it?
I can say that's an easy one, because there aren't many who have succeeded. So we can easily look up the qualities of those who have succeeded. You know, people like the late Ratan Tata, Arun Bharatram, Anand Mahindra. Now you look at the characteristics of these people, you will find something very, very common between the three of them. Three names I mentioned, there must be many more. For one thing, they're all humble. You can't find any of these people bragging about themselves or about their companies at any point of time. They don't talk big. They don't use jargon. When they speak to anyone, they speak with respect, and they speak as though the other person knows much more than they themselves do. If you met them on the streets, you wouldn't know who they are. So there is that humility and that willingness to learn and the respect for the other person. Something of this order, Tatabayashi, who won the Deming Prize for RICO in the 1970s, said that. Without a spirit of remorse and without a spirit of humility, it's impossible to pursue TQC, he said, or something to this effect. I think that is a fundamental characteristic, the willingness to learn, the willingness to understand that you don't know everything, that your organization must have many people who understand much more than you, and the collective wisdom of the organization is much, much bigger than what you as an individual can ever bring to the table. So if you have these attitudes, then you will produce a leadership that will lead to transformation. At all points of time, you'll be able to run a great organization. You'll be able to tide over the many ups and downs that are inevitable in this world. But if you go there with a certain arrogance, with hubris, that you know everything, and that you're going to tell others how to do, and you're going to set the sights for them, and you expect them to follow it, and if they don't follow it, off with his head kind of thing, then the leadership won't work. There are organizations today experiencing 20% attrition and 25% attrition, and I'm not talking about call centers and all where it's 100%. But if you meet the executives there, they simply explain it away. You know, in many methods of cause finding, one of them is explaining it away. This is the explaining it away type of cause finding. You can say anything, you know. So leadership is absolutely the deciding factor. You ask the question, my answer is yes, it is the deciding factor. And the chief executive himself is necessary. The number 2 and number 3 are not enough. A large number of times I have refused to be engaged in an organization where I don't see the chief executive coming forward and talking right at the outset. And if he or she is evading the issue, then I have no interest in them, because I know it's not possible. It's not a matter of our ego or anything like that. It's very simply not possible to create this kind of transformation if you don't have the right kind of leadership, or at least a leadership which is willing to learn.
I think these traits which you've mentioned are so fundamental, and they actually flow from Indian philosophy, or for that matter, they're universal traits, not specific to India. And without that kind of a trait, is a leader even willing to accept a problem when it is confronting it? That's a challenge often we find.
I agree with that. I was about to say it, but I stopped myself, but now I'll say it. Western education, Western style education is a fundamental problem in this. The Anglo-Saxon values that this causes us to imbibe is at the core of many of the problems in the organization. So in my programs, I talk about the assumptions we make about people, and I talk about the Anglo-Saxon way and the TQM way. So the Anglo-Saxon way of looking at people is a disaster for organizations, and that is what we bring to the table, because that's what your business schools teach us, that's what the newspapers advertise, and that's what the consultants teach you. So you're up against it. Now, I'm using the word Anglo-Saxon more specifically than the West. So the West is not one uniform set of values. So the Western European values, for instance, are different from the Anglo-Saxon values, which is England and America. Now, if you go further up north to the Nordic countries, the values are still more different. I think we need to make a study of the Nordic way of management. That is a pending task before us. There's a lot to be learned, I suspect, from the Scandinavian way of management. And there are books on it, but I think not enough. But I think whatever is available, we should read. I once proposed to Lars that we should form a study group in IAQ to study the Nordic way of management. We haven't got down to it, but I think it should be done. I think those are better places to learn from than the Anglo-Saxon way. The Anglo-Saxon way will lead to the kind of problems that we witness in our organizations today.
When you say Anglo-Saxon way, is any specific 2-3 aspects you can mention?
It boils down to the assumptions that you make about people. People work for money is one thing. For example, if you pay them more money, they will work better. Just one example. So you make an assumption about people like that, then everything will flow from that. So a whole bunch of such assumptions. So we should be careful about what kind of assumptions we make about people. It's not the question of what is true, but one set of assumptions will lead to one set of results, another set of assumptions will lead to another set of results. In TQM, our assumption is everyone wants to contribute to the organization. In the Anglo-Saxon way, everyone has to be coerced into performing. If everyone wants to contribute to the organization, where is the question of coercing anybody for performance? I have never met anyone in my life who doesn't want to contribute to the organization.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
So where is the conflict? The conflict is created by your assumption. It's not there intrinsically in people.
Very well put, Ram. So you mentioned about some of the people who had these kind of values, and like Ratan Tata, and I think some people like Dr. Jamshed Irani was one such example. And there are a few others who, Venu Srinivas, another example of having put society before the company and done some outstanding work.
I agree with those names that you're adding now. I completely agree.
Because I recall for Dr. Irani in an open forum after 5 days workshop in Tokyo, when the president of JOS asked any feedback, for him to stand up and say, this is the most useful week of my entire business career, was in a way, like you say, emptying the mind of humility to accept what we've done so far is not enough.
Right.
And when he came back, I recall, we decided to meet once in a quarter as a team to learn from each other. So the first meeting, he says, I started TQM, I've called it off. So you're wondering why he called it off. And he said, our workmen have been complaining their roofs of their houses are leaking for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And if I can't fix it, I have no business to talk about TQM.
It's a great famous story, yeah.
Till I don't fix that, I will not talk. That's kind of a humility.
Absolutely.
And similarly, Venu's work in the villages, 2,500 villages, temples, all for social good. Phenomenal contribution by these. How can we have more of such business leaders in India?
Absolutely.
Okay. Next is you've collaborated with some of the brightest minds in quality, including Professor Hitoshi Kume, Greg Watson, and many others. What was the most significant lesson you took away from those collaborations, and how have they influenced your perspective on quality? You can add other names also, just given two.
I think I've learned from a lot of people, and I must mention you first because you were the first to expose me to this whole world of TQM, and the others came later. Yes, but you picked up the two names quite well, especially Professor Kume, whose book I read without knowing that I would ever meet him. Then you brought Dr. Kume into SRF, and that gradually led into a deep relationship. And that's how I suppose a mentor relationship works. So it was very powerful because we talked about the characteristics of good leaders, so that applies to Dr. Kume as well. His ability for simplicity. That is, he goes back to the first principles and asks questions and explains the situation based on those principles in very simple terms. Now, if you don't have a grasp of this, as many people experience, they come and say, but he didn't say anything, but he didn't teach us anything new. But sitting there, I'm getting overwhelmed by the amount of learning I'm getting from those questions. So I realized that if you understand some very basic principles, then you can handle any number of situations, and you can ask questions more precisely and more probingly such that the other person can learn. And sometimes the fact that the other person cannot learn at that moment is also an information to you, and then you know you should work with that person until he can or she can learn from that situation. So this is just one aspect of what Dr. Kume is. being able to cut through difficult situations.
You just mentioned, certain principles he follows for asking questions. Simple. What were those principles?
They are all derived from the basic quality, quality first. Whether you are cooking up causes or what are the real causes, what are the facts behind. In his normal conversation, PDCA would burst out. For example, one day we were going to the Manali plant in SRF, and the road was a non-existent road to the factory. And as we were going through the bumps on the road, and we were going up and down in the car, he asked this question. He said, "Who is responsible for this road? What does he check? What countermeasure he take?" In Japanese English. So he described the whole PDCA in some 3 sentences. Right? The answer to that is no one. Nothing happens. I mentioned this to an IAS officer, and he laughed and laughed away. How these stupid Japanese, they can think of it like that in India. That was his reaction. So we cannot understand the depth of these questions. So by being present when he was asking these questions, I learned the way I must work. That's how it happened. Watson is different. Greg is a profound thinker. He is also extremely positive and patient as a teacher. And he's the one who has woven the Japanese way of thinking with the Western way. If anyone has achieved any measure of success in this field, it's him. He understands the deeper meaning of the kanji characters, of the words that are used, and therefore he comes up with the real meaning, underlying meaning, the profound meaning of all that they say. Take the simple 5S. Seiri, Seiton, Seiso, and Seiketsu. The first 2 seis are different kanji. The second 2 seis are different kanjis. They are both pronounced sei, but the kanjis are different. The meanings are different. So I understood the profound meaning of 5S by understanding the difference in the meaning of the first 2 and the second 2 seis from him, not from a Japanese. Sometimes when he would raise something about the evolution of, that's another contribution he makes, the history, evolution of some of these things, then I would go and ask a Japanese, one of our professors, and they wouldn't know. Greg, sitting in Finland, is raising those questions. So I think the profundity of his thinking is the broadness of his thinking, the deep appreciation of history right from the 19th century onwards, whatever has happened on quality. And of course his thesis was based on a lot of understanding of Deming. And he asked me to write my comments on his dissertation, and I sent him a very, very long answer to those questions that he raised, and he included that in his dissertation as comments of so and so. So what I mean is, therefore, we could interact with each other in a manner in which the deeper meanings of things became clearer and clearer. And as you rightly said, there are many others. I have to acknowledge people, then there are many, many. I think it would stop at these 2.
Okay, thank you for sharing your experiences with these 2. If you had the chance to start a new quality movement today, knowing everything you know now, what would you do differently? how would you engage modern organizations in embracing quality as a core value?
Janak, I'm already doing it. The CEO through TQM program is a significant move off from the standard TQM way of learning about how to manage. The program that is coming up, the one-day program on leading your enterprise to greatness, would make a further switch. I'm not losing any of my principles. What I'm changing is the languaging of what I say. See, quality arose as a discipline way back, but more importantly in the 50s, when quality per se was the overwhelming issue, especially for the Japanese. And then we built a whole management way around it. And that's profound, no question about it. And we have generated so many fundamental principles, including respect for people, out of this subject of quality. After all, when quality as a subject started, all these things were not there. It evolved into this. But we've lost the hearing of managers, especially the top managers, quite some time ago. And if we keep using the same language, we'll be completely obsolete and unwanted. It doesn't matter that we are wanted or not wanted, but I think what we are talking about and what we are trying to do is important. And I think, therefore, we need to use a language which the current generations can understand and can feel, yes, there is something profound in this. If we don't draw their attention to something profound in what we have been doing, in a language which is different from the language which they resist actually by now, then I think we will not make progress. So I think the fundamental requirement is that we change our languaging.
So Ram, as someone who has dedicated his life to advancing quality practices, what has been the most rewarding part of your journey? Is there a particular moment or achievement that stands out as your proudest?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because there are many moments when you feel good. Some of these moments are when things happen and people feel happy. For example, Mr. Bharatram still talks about with the launch of TQM in SRF with pride and happiness. He did that last month, 2 months ago in a large gathering, for example. There are chief executives who talk about or acknowledge what you have done. There are organizations like ISQ and ASQ which give you rewards. But the real thrill is from something else. It is from what people in an organization do or say at times. There is this factory which had and still has a C2 union. It was militant. But after this transformation, sometime, the union together with management would meet me when I go there. And in one of these visits, the president of the union turns around and tells me, "Humko roz factory aana acha lagta hai." To me, that is transformation. That is a bigger thrill than many of the other things. So what you see as the impact in the lives of people, that's important. The way you have seen some young people progress in life and take up leadership positions themselves, that is a thrill. So I would say it's not about particular results, particular milestones, but the unexpected daily happenings when you visit companies where you have been working for a long time and certain things happen. So that's how I see this journey. I'm not looking for a reward per se, but some sense that what you're doing is working.
I relate exactly to what you said. I think not only about TQM, even before that when I was working, I still find some people whom I haven't met for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, suddenly come out and recognize what happened when we were working together.
That's right.
That I think...
That's right. You run into them at airports, you run into them somewhere else, and you are recognized, and they come and talk to you. You did this to me, you told me this, etc. You have forgotten what you said, but they remember. There is a union leader in Denso with whom we had taken some tough action. He remained in touch with me all the way through every year when we were in Delhi, and even after when we left Delhi, never forgetting to send a greeting. He's now himself retired, but he stayed in touch for 30 years. To me, that is important, because it means what we were doing had an impact on his life.
Yes.
A positive impact, hopefully.
Yeah, that's why they remember. If it wasn't positive. Okay, for young professionals stepping into leadership roles today, the world can feel overwhelming. What advice would you give them about integrating quality into their work and decision making, even in fast-paced, high-pressure environment?
I tell people 2 or 3 things. One is, do what you ought to do. As simple as that. 2, forget about yourself, make others succeed, make your colleagues succeed. 3, you mentioned decision making. So in decision making, take yourself out of the equation. I think if these 3 are enough of what I would tell young professionals.
Wow, that's great. That's what you said a little while ago. Talk the same thing in a different language. Yes. That's interesting. Finally, Ram, when you look back at the legacy you have built, what do you hope people will remember most about your contributions to the field of quality management? Is there one enduring message you would like to leave behind?
Janak, I'm really not concerned about whether people will remember me or not. Finally, all that you and I have done, and many of our colleagues have done, would be worthwhile if, as a result of our work, the society has benefited at least a wee bit. And that's the acid test for all that we're doing. I'm not sure how well we have done in this respect. Some questions that I ask myself frequently are, will poverty go? Will people feel more good about themselves than they do now? And lastly, will we have a livable planet? I think these are some of the acid tests of what we do. And we cannot hope to do anything more than a minuscule contribution to this. And we should do it without worrying about the size of our contribution.
Do you think we'll have a livable planet 50 years from now?
I don't know, and no one knows what's going to happen. It doesn't look so good.
So it feels, and like some people, the father of AI himself has clearly stated, he's worried. what harm I will cause.
If we are not worried about the way the planet is going to go, that is a problem, because there are genuine causes for worry. There are no plans to address them. But I don't want to end this on a depressing note. So I think we should cherish the little things that we have done, and we should continue to do as long as our bodies permit us to do whatever we can do. Not worry about the size of our contribution, not worry about people recognizing us, but just keep doing. I think that's the way to go.
I agree 100%. That's the way to go, and hope is essential. We hope. Thank you very much for spending your time with us. Deeply appreciate. Your contribution is enormous, whether you may like to remember or not, but I think there are many people in this country who already recognize it, and it'll remember for a long, long time. Thank you and all the best, Ram.
Thank you so much, Janak. Wish you all the best in your endeavor. You're doing a great thing by carrying out this whole series, and that is going to be a lasting legacy, because it doesn't matter whether it is witnessed by a lot of people day after tomorrow, but I think if it is seen by people 20 years from now, we will have done our job.
Thank you.